ReZero, Volume 6, Chapter 4, Part 4. Won't let me say the words. My. And furthermore, you carry in your arms. Could that be the half-demon girl? When Subaru approached the rocky area, Petalgeese cocked his head and looked at Amelia, whom Subaru held in his arms. The madman's head remained parallel to the ground as his tongue slid out in amusement, dribbling spittle. Heavens, for her to lose her life before even undertaking our trial. What a tragic fate! What an untimely demise! and what diligence on your part! On the verge of the trial, before I even act, you have stolen the half-demon's body and life! Petalgeese shouted, hailing Amelia's death with exaggerated gestures, waving his arms around. Subaru then noticed that the witch cult adherents had gathered around Petalgeese at some point, all of them on their knees to devotively listen to the madman's ravings. Me. Diligence? Hearing Subaru's halting murmur, Petalgeese rushed over with jubilant laughter. Yes, that's right! Diligence! It is splendid! Like us, slow to decide, meager of wit, and lacking in divisiveness, you made the witch's will manifest before any other! And he slid onto his knees and fell prostrate, virtually slamming his forehead against the rocky ground. Compared to you, my fingers and I were so slow, so foolish, so lacking. Forgive me for being unable to requite your love. Forgive this slothful, unfaithful flesh. Forgive the stupid man, unable to respond to the love you bestow upon me. A flood of tears poured from Petalgeese as he pounded the rock with an arm, nearly splitting his forehead with the intensity of his apology. The fervent act of self-harm was accompanied by a spray of blood. Subaru could see bone from where his wrist was cut. Despite that, Petalgeese did not cease his violent action. Indeed, each of the faithful, kneeling all around, rushed to emulate the madman's self-destructive actions. It was a cacophony of blood and agony, and as he watched it all, Subaru felt nothing. Even with the man he had so hated right before him, his heart was unmoved whatsoever. Ah, what can I do for you, who fulfilled the trial in my place, while I failed to respond to her feelings? Tell me, please, what may I do for you, so that I may prove that my love is not slothful? Petalgeese came close, the blood trickling from his head, causing tears of blood to flow as he made his earnest plea. Subaru replied, Kill me. Surely, even the expression on that madman's face would register shock in the sudden request. Are you sure about that? But it did not. Without a moment's hesitation, he kicked Subaru away. The wind was kicked out of him. Subaru sailed back as Petalgeese watched him with an expression of ecstasy. Ha! Splendid indeed! With the trial fulfilled in the search of salvation, my actions and those of my believers seeking salvation may have thus become diligent. Ah, we are spared from being slothful, both you and I. You have my thanks, and my diligence has earned her love. Petalgeese harbored no misgivings about the brooding of Subaru's reply, nor felt a single pang in his conscience for his own actions, seeing neither as contrary to the laws of the world in any way. Under the guise of diligence, his bloodlust had been unleashed. Subaru, seeing this in the madman, closed his eyes. His heart hardly stirred. At the very least, it was what Subaru wanted to see just then. Although, I may say, When he heard Pedokis mutter something, Subaru felt hostility press upon his skin. Unable to pass even a single trial, not even facing a single deadly sin, bearing great expectations only to stumble over the first stone in their path. The madman looked down at the sleeping Amelia, sighing. Ah, you were lazy! He had no greater words to demean Amelia's death. Subaru knew this because he recalled how the madman had disgraced the life of a girl precious to him in a world long past. Subaru opened his eyes. That instant, he saw a dark cloud approaching, taking the form of a hand. For a single moment, he recoiled from the painful memories rushing in the back of his mind. But this evil was different. His body could move, his feet could move, his arms could move. Hence, his body evaded it. As the black hand gently slid toward him, Subaru leaped aside, holding Amelia in his arms. The hand slipped past, seeming perplexed as it vanished. Subaru's breath was ragged as he watched it disappear. Pedokis stared at him, eyes wide, with a fire raging in them, asking in a shaking voice, "You, just now, you saw my unseen hands, did you not?" The madman inserted his twig-like fingers into his mouth, crushing his fingertips with his teeth one by one. As each part of his flesh burst with the horrible sound of bones snapping and fresh blood seeping out, he continued, "That will not do. That will not do at all. It is strange. It is wrong. There's some error, some mistake. My power, the power of sloth, the unseen hands, her favor bestowed upon me, and another has set eyes upon them, is unforgivable!" Spitting blood, Pedokis chewed on fragments of bone and nail as he glared at Subaru with bloodshot eyes. Next instant, black arms rose out of Pedokis' back. Pedokis' shadow exploded into 7 black limbs that madly danced about. A chill ran up Subaru's spine at the resemblance of 2 evil hands that punished Subaru when he touched upon the taboo. But if I can see them, my body can move. He could dodge them. The speed of the black hands was not all that fast. Though they boasted the power to rip a human limb from limb at a distance, the greatest menace was their power of invisibility. The greatest advantage no longer worked on Subaru. With the last wisps of his life burning down, Subaru exhibited physical abilities beyond his limitations. Why? Why can you avoid them? Do you see them? This love belongs to me alone! Deep down, there's only one guy I don't want to be killed by. That's you. Subaru twisted to evade one hand and leaped forward to touch a different set of fingertips stretching up toward him. He crushed instantly to avoid the 2 coming at him from the left and right, practically falling forward and closing the distance with Pedokis. Seeing the insanity on Pedokis' face twist into shock, a dark pleasure filled Subaru's belly. He just remembered the fact that he wanted to kill that madman. Ah! Taking the shortest route possible, Subaru slammed his head into the bridge of the madman's nose, violently kicking his body as he rocked backward. The black hands flowed about, unable to strike precisely. Now blood was pouring from Subaru's forehead too, cut by Pedokis' front teeth. The heavy bleeding got into his eyes, blotting out his vision on the right side. A moment after, he noticed something sliding under his feet. It grabbed Subaru's legs, sent him flying. The instant before he slammed against a large tree, Subaru abandoned all thoughts of cushioning the blow, clutching Amelia's remains even more strongly. Not to cling to her, but to protect her. Ugh! And so, his back collided against the tree, making him feel a seemingly lethal crack in his spine. Several vertebrae broke, and his recently closed wounds opened all at once. Each one cried out in a chorus of ferocious pain as Subaru fell to the ground, writhing, and bubbles appeared around his mouth. Disgraceful! Disgraceful, is it not? I am so relieved, truly relieved. At this rate, I would have wallowed in idleness, all my actions rendered meaningless. But I am indeed diligent, exhausting my efforts for love. Shut up, Tim Wit! His breathing sounded strange. He felt like he had taken heavy damage to his lungs. Even so, he laughed and mocked Petalgeese, bubbles of blood dripping from his lips all the while. What love, you moron! That so-called love you say you got. I can see it, too, can't I? She's been cheating on you, sucker. What are you saying? Saying! My brain trembles! Petalgeese tore hair from his head as he raged, eyes wide open. He walked toward the falling Subaru, violently kicking Amelia from his arms as if to deliberately distance her from Subaru. Amelia's body rolled, slamming into the roots of various trees. Petalgeese glanced sideways at it and laughed. Denigrating my love is impermissible. I've decided. It is decided. Though the half-demon who should have undergone the trial perished beforehand, those sheltering her yet remain. Petalgeese ranted and raved as one of the black hands lifted Subaru by his neck. Subaru's eyes snapped wide as the force threatened to rip his head off his shoulders. Real pain left him unable to speak. First, I shall eradicate those associated with the mansion. Next, I shall sacrifice the residents of the village nearby for her affection. Nothing shall remain, or any survivors would be proof of sloth. I, the pinnacle of diligence, and my fingers shall render judgment upon all. The highway is sealed by the mist. There is no one to interfere with my love. Shouting and spitting in his agitated state, Petalgeese laid out his diabolical scheme. Before that, you seemed to clutch the half-demon's flesh as if it was quite precious to you. If I destroy it, I wonder what wonderful sounds I will hear you make. Petalgeese's head tilted, his lips twisted, and his eyes filled with inhuman curiosity. 5 arms, other than the one holding Subaru up, crawled out from the madman's back, each moving independently as they wriggled their way toward Amelia's remains. One grasped each of her limbs, the last hand wrapping around her slender neck. Do you see them? Do you understand what is about to happen? Stop! At that moment, Subaru was racked with fear, precisely because he could see it. It made him remember every detail of what that man's black hands did to Rem's body when he couldn't see them. And now, the same destructive impulses were directed toward Amelia's flesh. He had no power to prevent the vile act. Subaru's grief only deepened Petalgeese's crazed, amused smile. All that remained was for him to cruelly rip Amelia's flesh asunder. What are you doing? Without warning, a voice poured down from the heavens, coldly thrumming the ears of all present. Petalgeese's expression shifted, his gaze drifting around in search of the speaker. The voice had enough power in it, and well-honed anger, to make even his expression change. Finally, Petalgeese's gaze turned toward a single point in the sky and stopped. A second after, Subaru, still held aloft by his neck, looked at the same point in the sky too. I repeat. An incredible number of icicles poured down, filling their vision, seemingly blotting out the nighttime sky. The breath surge dyed white. In the blink of an eye, a cold that threatened to chill the whole world spread throughout the forest. Black-robed figures, still on their knees and pedalgees, with a crazed smile over him, were at a loss for words. "What are you lowlifes doing to my daughter?" The apocalypse beast of eternal frost dyed the world white. To Subram, it was the being who would bring him death at the end of his 10th time, the 10th world. Since being invited to this world, Subaru had experienced death time and again. Under normal circumstances, it was an ordeal no one faced more than once a lifetime. That common sense rule had been violated, and Subaru, who had already been granted 10 opportunities to grapple with death, knew as much about it as anyone. And having come to know it so well, Subaru had become able to sense its approach. His refined senses told him loud and clear that death was on its way. "You lot sure like to do whatever you please." The voice, bearing penetrating, cold, and oppressive might, had come from the icy veil in the sky above. The voice hailed from a small, mouse-colored cat, its emotions as frigid as the horde of sharp-tipped icicles accompanying it on its way to the ground. It was small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, with a tail about as long as it was tall. It had a pink nose and round eyes. Its short arms were folded, almost human-like, as its expression was fraught with deep hatred. Pedalgees and the other members of the witch cult were silent before the supernatural being that spoke in the language of men. And Subaru, who was with them, felt his throat closing up in shock for a different reason. He'd never before seen that being, that spirit, shaking in anger like that. As the one present in that place, feeling the overflow of his anger, he knew that death had come to this world. Fuck. Under the white mist surrounding the floating spirit, Puck, the forest in their vicinity, let out a crack-like sound as it was transformed. The trees turned white, as if green had been sucked out of them. Their mana absorbed. Leaves, branches, and trunks froze over, dead as they fell. The ground itself displayed identical facts. First, the flowers died. Then the cold crept over the soil. And finally, it reached Subaru, also on the earth, stabbing him all over with burning pain. He felt lethargy gradually rising from the depths of his body, causing his breathing to falter as his mind began to fade. Long before, Subaru had experienced being forcibly robbed of his mana at Beatrice's hands. The angered Puck was employing that power on a global scale, turning the world's power into his own. Besides Subaru, holding back a whimper, Pedalgees backed up a step with heavy sweat on his brow, and the kneeling witch cult was grasping oxygen through their open mouths, almost like a fish. "The witch cult. No matter how much time passes, you never do change, do you? In every age, it is you who bring me the saddest things of all." Puck spoke as if dealing with noxious insects as he trained his eyes on a single point in the forest. Subaru, following his gaze, saw that there was a single space left that Puck's power was not affecting. Only the prone girl's corpse was protected from the end of the world. "Ah, my poor Leah. You died without understanding anything." After gazing longingly at Amelia, Puck turned his eyes toward those who still lived. "Depriving my daughter of her life is a grave crime. Do not think any of you will escape alive." "How dare a mere spirit! How dare you speak?" "Half-demon, failing an ordeal, is nothing but a filthy pretender. The blame is yours for your sloth and inability to protect this fool. Ha! Ah! Ah! My brain is trembling." Pedalgees responded to Puck's threats by raising both hands to the sky, flying into a rage. The madman's bloodshot eyeballs were focused as Betelgeuse's wielding bloodlust erupted in a geyser of froth. All that shall transpire, all that must transpire, the proper course of history is recorded in my gospel. The witch loves me, and I shall repay her with diligence. Whereas you, lowly spirit, wallow in idleness. Love wasn't. To Betelgeuse, acts of worship for the witch were nothing but repaying her for her love. For the madman, actions that displayed his adoration of the witch had absolute priority over anything else. The witch was supreme, and the witch was the greatest. Furthermore, nothing and no one was permitted to defy his love for the witch. Death to half-demons, and you too must pay for your idleness. The witch's favor is the truth that lets my heart beat. All must be sacrificed for it. Betelgeuse waved his arms, ranting, raving, and loudly stamping his foot. Puck looked down upon Betelgeuse's madness with eyes that were cold to their very core. They contained neither pity nor anger, only a lucid view of the low worth of the object before them. Puck's and Betelgeuse's absolutely incompatible wills clashed, fueling each other's bloodlust. My fingers! This fool must pay for his... Die! The descending icicles poured down on the witch-cult adherents, skewering them and pinning them in place. The cultist bodies and limbs were impaled against the ground, pierced like bugs for study. The air creaked, and the flesh of the dead witch-cult worshippers froze over, turning the rocky area to an ice sculpture exhibit. Instantly, without warning, Puck had taken nearly 20 lives. During that time, his gaze did not waver any way, neither did Betelgeuse's. Unmoved by the loss of the followers who obeyed his commands, who were now literal sacrificial pawns, exploited Puck's temporary shift of attention away from him. My brain is trembling. His lips twisted darkly, and a moment later, Betelgeuse's shadow exploded. Simultaneously, Subaru's body was cast aside as a total of 7 arms bore upon Puck, floating in the sky. With Puck's power, dealing the gently advancing evil hands was child's play, but Puck made no reaction to the advance of the hands, because he didn't see them. Puck! When Subaru tried to raise his voice to warn of the danger, the voice and eyes Puck turned toward him made his blood run cold. Be quiet, Subaru. I will deal with you late. Eh? But before the spirit finished speaking, the black hands trapped his tiny body, which vanished from Subaru's view. Puck's body was so small that a normal adult's hand was more than large enough to conceal it from view. There was no way anyone could have seen it through 7 hands. Each of those black hands was so overwhelmingly powerful that they could rip a human body apart with ease. Carelessness! Negligence! In other words, sloth! You should have eliminated me immediately! You possess such power, yet you neglected its proper use! And this is the result! It's this! The unseen hands that only Subaru detected enveloped Tuck's body and crushed it. Before Betelgeuse danced with mad delight, the great spirit was cruelly erased. Don't make me laugh. In the next moment, Subaru saw the converging black limbs being blown apart. That's all? You're 400 years too young to be invoking the witch. If you really want to kill me... The frozen trees, unable to bear their own weight, shattered into shards of ice with one flick of its tail. Corpses of the witch-cult followers who had become ice sculptures were smashed to smithereens. The front pawns responsible for this made the ground under them into an absolute zero zone of death. Its softest breath rivaled a raging blizzard, and within that white mist, its eyes were like dazzling, glittering gold, eyes that mercilessly towered over a world of death.
Then stretch half Statella's 1,000 shadows towards me.
It was a four-legged feline beast with a gray fur, boasting such size that it stood above the forest. It was the beast of the end that destroyed the mansion and brought death to Subaru in a prior world. It was indeed a grand manifestation of the end. The intensity of the cold went up another level, and it hurt to even keep his eyes open to watch the world go white. Subaru endured the pain as he looked up at the beast, gape. What? A shaking voice echoed from a tiny corner of that world of ultimate cold. What is it you're telling me to bring? This time, Petalgeese's scream brought a vertical cut to his parched lips from which a trace of blood trickled. With the blink of an eye, this too froze over, bringing an end to the bleeding and pain. Subaru feared that closing his eyes amid the blowing cold meant he would never open them again. He took in Petalgeese's final cry and looked up at the beast once more. Puck, is that you?
I suppose it would be a little mean to say, isn't it obvious?
The gray-colored beast's titanic mouth moved in reply to Subaru's broken question. Each word came with a gale, but it was the enormous beast's sarcasm that confirmed Subaru's suspicions. With that answer, Subaru came to accept the fact that in the previous world, and the world before that, Subaru had died at the end because... While Subaru was compelled to stay silent, Petalgeese glared at Puck and murmured, Impossible. The madman thrust his intact hand into his mouth, crushing his fingers one by one, and they oozed blood. It was as if that pain was what tethered his perpetual madness to the world. It is impossible. It cannot be. A mere spirit, a lowly spirit, cannot possess such power. If that were possible,
Echidna.
Petalgeese's movements stopped as bloody froth trickled from the corner of his lips, his eyes wide open. Puck had whispered a word that interrupted Petalgeese's denial. The color of Petalgeese's face had changed the instant he heard what was apparently a name.
As a man of the witch cult, you understand what that means, don't you?
Filthy! Petalgeese's reaction to it was nothing short of dramatic. Along with the sound of something hard, blood gushed from his mouth. It came from his molars. He was so angry he'd bitten down on his teeth hard enough to break them. It is repugnant to even speak that name. Ah, you poor lazy fool, ignorant of fear. You dare speak the name of a fallen witch, a witch other than Satella before me? Petalgeese's eyes had gone from bloodshot to scarlet-dyed, maybe from the arteries that had burst open. Tears of blood flowed from the corners. The madman turned his bitten and torn fingertips toward Puck. My faith, my love, that is nothing less than an insult to everything I offer to her.
A human living mere decades has no business arguing time with the spirit.
Just like that, Petalgeese ceased his mad writhing. No, this was not something he had done consciously. He had frozen from the feet up, and that had made him stop. As Subaru lay on his side, his vision blurry and white, he saw his mortal enemy brought to the verge of death. Petalgeese, too, knew that his freezing and his death was not long in the offing. However, at the very end, his madness was directed not towards his own impending death, but at Puck, towering before him. The death of one's faith has nothing to do with time. You are a lazy beast, born with eternal time, and yet exhausting most of it in idleness. Do not compare me with a fool such as you. My brain is trembling. Even knowing his own end was near, Betelgeuse's madness never wavered. Subaru knew no phenomenon more absolute or terrifying than death. Betelgeuse's behavior was truly defiant. Seeing him profess his faith in the moment before his demise was proof that he was a truly corrupt being.
Death is not punishment enough for you. That's why I hate your kind.
The trial has been fulfilled. No matter what happens to this filthy body, so long as my feelings reach the witch I revere, she shall grant her favor. It will be so good to see her again. Spreading both hands for the sky above, Betelgeuse let out a cackle. The snow blew with greater intensity, dyeing his gaunt body white. Subaru wasn't sure whether his voice or his movements gently slowed first. Yet, even then, Betelgeuse's laughter did not cease. He was one with his buoyant madness till his laughter finally ceased and, with it, his life.
Quit while you were ahead, didn't you?
Grey Beast murmured as it thrust down its front paw, smashing the Betelgeuse ice sculpture into dust. Even as Subaru watched the madman's life expire, his shattered fragments carried away by the wind, no strong emotion stirred within him. He'd hated the man so. He had so wished to kill him. Betelgeuse is where it had all started. Subaru had believed that killing him would make everything turn out all right. But was that truly the result? Though he had witnessed the death of his hated foe, Subaru had only hollow emptiness inside him. The defeat of Betelgeuse meant clearing away the threat posed by the witch cult. But Rem, who ought to have been there sharing his joy, had been erased from the world. Amelia, who should have been quietly waiting for him to bring good news upon his return, had died at Subaru's own hands. The accumulated weight of both their deaths had made Subaru desire his own demise. But in the end, he could not even manage that. A different avenger claimed retribution. Subaru had nothing left. He'd done everything over and, as a result, achieved nothing.
Now then,
Subaru felt his own powerlessness beaten into him as the beast quietly looked down upon him. He was reminded anew that the giant beast was Puck. The enormity of that truth made his body quake. He was reminded of how, previously, he'd watched with detached amusement when the knights in the Council of Elders at the Royal Palace had acted so terrified of fighting Puck when they heard his alias.
let's talk, shall we?
Now, he was painfully aware of just what they had felt back then. The cold was making it hard to think. Already, the pain tearing across his whole body had vanished. Subaru heard the gentle footsteps of his own death drawing near. And just as his body slackened from the sweet premonition that the end was nigh,
Oh, this won't do. You're bleeding out too much. I'll put a stop to that.
ah! He felt like he was being roasted alive, waking up with his fading senses. With merciless pain blocking his throat, Subaru saw that each wound in his body was audibly freezing over. White steam rose as sharp ice connected, stitched, and tethered his wounds, even the ones inside his body. Through this act of treatment, abandoning all consideration for the human body, Subaru's flesh was violently healed. Blood vessels exploded within his eyes, dyeing his vision scarlet. It was more than an ow, ow, ow. The hell that had erupted within his body transcended even pain.
Subaru, you've committed 3 sins.
Subaru reeled, howling with a voiceless scream. The giant beast continued to speak as if nothing had happened. Though he had become enormous in size, his mouth lined with endless sharp fangs, the tone of his voice had changed. The cadence was as gentle as always. That terrified him all the more.
First, you broke your promise with Leah. It seems you did not truly understand just how weighty a promise formed between two people is to a spirit mage. I suppose you truly do not know how much your rashly breaking that promise hurt Leah.
His mind rejected an understanding of what Puck was saying. No, his mind was dominated by pain. His eternal organs were frozen, and his broken bones were connected to one another by ice gouging obstructed flesh. The crimson ice over his open wounds had been ripped away, the areas affected frozen to the core, violently stopping the bleeding. The freezing had spread farther. The pain had spread farther. Death was spreading. It hurts. Hurts, 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 hurts.
Second, you ignored Leah's wishes and came back. Do you even know how much that drove her into a corner and made her suffer when she didn't want to see you again? Not only did you break your promise, you had to trample on Leah's heart as you pleased.
The Subaru on the white ground, limbs spread wide. Puck drew his face close and blew with his icy breath. Subaru's flowing tears became needles, stabbing his eyeballs. His brain convulsed with the intense agony.
And third, you let Leah die.
It was like having his very soul filed down. The extreme pain made Subaru forget how to breathe. And in that agony, like having every nerve in his body immersed in magma, Subaru cursed his own shallowness. He thought that pain was a lesser thing than death. He was wrong. He was wrong about everything. Pain, death, fear. He smashed the heart of the weakling named Subarunatsky in equal measure. The soul of Subarunatsky had been backed into a corner with nowhere to run. Subaru's sluggish mind began to appreciate that terrifying truth Puck stated to him.
In accordance with the pact, I'll be destroying the world now.
Puck's eyes contained anger. Only at that juncture did a new emotion begin to come to the fore.
I will bury everything under ice and snow as my parting gift to Leah.
That won't.
It has nothing to do with making her happy or not. No matter what the pact, I will not break what was agreed upon.
Puck's eyes narrowed as he responded to Subaru's incoherent voice.
But that act will end unfulfilled, I imagine, even if I spread this world of ice to cover every land like the forest where Leah and I dwelled. The Sword Saint will stand before me. That is a battle I will not win.
Puck seemed to lament the disparity in strength when he brought up a certain red-haired hero's other name. Subaru couldn't believe he was hearing those words. Puck, wielding such overpowering might, had bluntly stated they had no chance of defeating the Sword Saint. And if Puck knew he'd be struck down in the process, why would he sacrifice himself in such a battle? Why?
Leah was the entire reason for my existence.
Puck responded to Subaru's inquiry. The wind grew even colder, stabbing Subaru's flesh, filling up his eyes, freezing his blood. The end was nigh.
It is meaningless for me to remain in a world without her. Now that I've lost her, I will not allow the world to move on. For me, everything ended when that girl died.
When Puck finished speaking, the wind's intensity suddenly spiked.
How long would it take for a person to die if he's slowly, gradually frozen from the tips of his extremities on up? Have you ever wondered that, Subaru? I'll take that as a yes. I want you to learn the answer.
Slowly, slowly, the chill consumed more and more of his flesh. His wounds and internal organs were already frozen, They were exempt, as the rest of Subaru's flesh expired from the fingertips up. If pain could truly drive a person mad, his sanity would have been shattered long before. He wanted his mind to be ripped apart, smashed to bits, scattered in all directions. Or if not,
Mist is coming. It seems you've lured quite a nasty one.
he couldn't hear. Someone was saying something, but he couldn't hear.
Gluttonies. Nowadays they call it the white whale, don't they? Calling it over, letting Leah die, losing your own life. You truly are incorrigible. Do you know that?
He couldn't hear. He couldn't hear. But even though he shouldn't have heard it, he heard the voice. He heard laughter from somewhere, a mocking voice. He knew that laughter, the voice of the man he hated, the point of death. Where is it coming from? With the end near, his consciousness sought an answer to that question. Then he realized it. The incessant cackling was coming from his own throat. Ecstasy began to rule his brain, drowning out his pain. He took his first steps into a spreading world of madness. The way it warped everything around him felt good. Laughter wouldn't stop. His own laughter was mocking him. The one who had let Rem die, who had killed Amelia, and who was dying like a dog himself. Yes, he was truly, how would he put it?
Subaru, you're lazy.
With the sharp sound, he blacked out. It was probably not only his consciousness and his life that had been severed. It was something more, something that had been barely holding him together, that audibly came apart in that moment. Snap. I know this part's been a long time in the making, a long time in the coming, and I know I've been a little slower on the upload recently. I won't say I've lost all motivation with this series. I do still enjoy reading it, but I've been distracted by other things, and thus have been uploading a little slower. Probably don't expect a ton of consistency from me as of right now, but I am trying to get stuff up. And I'm not going to promise anything, but I feel like I might be getting a little bit more out of it in the future. I think a lot of my slowness to come from uploading these things was the editing process was getting a little meh, but I might be able to work out something with that. With some of this Puck stuff, the voices and the editing of his voice, some of that has reinvigorated me with parts of that. So if I'm able to follow some sort of process like I did with that, I might be able to make myself a little more excited about it yet. I really do like these end results, and I do enjoy reading, but I've been distracting myself, like I said. So hopefully I can get this up more and at least finish this book by the end of the year, which is coming close. I should be able to. It's just one more chapter, but at the uploads I'm going at, maybe not. I'll see. I'm half tempted to start switching these to full chapter uploads just because I could go a bit more at my pace and not have to worry about as much, edit more as I go. And editing as I go would be a little easier for me, I think. I'll have to see on that, though. A lot of that stuff is a bit weird right now. But thank you for listening if you have. Like if you do, subscribe if you would. And I suppose I'll see you guys next time. Bye.